And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. If you're wondering what's going on in space, so are we. By the way, we've got a new star field background that we're showing off here. That's actually Cygnus. More on that at a later time. And here's the last day of activity from our favorite star, known as El Sol. And if you've got comments to leave directly for the sun because you think the sun is conscious, leave them in our comments section. Check out the coronal hole rotating in here. We've got 3 sunspots, actually. Here's a coronal hole. Here's sunspot 2837. It's degraded. Here's sunspot 2836. It's also degraded. And here's sunspot 2835. It's grown. By the way, this is 193 angstroms ionized iron from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Here's the colorized magnetogram, and you can see this leading umbra here is quite large and quite in charge of the activity. Again, the other sunspots have degraded significantly here. However, sunspot 2835 remains significant. That leading umbra is about the size of planet Earth right there. And as this moves out of the Earth-facing quiet zone, the likelihood of major solar flares remains. We did see a C-class flare, and it would have been larger had that sunspot been on the limb when it occurred. Here's a composite view, including 211 and 171 angstroms. Those are both ionized iron spectra, as well as 304 angstroms ionized helium. Great composite view there. And we'll show you that solar flare data a little bit later in the video. Here's a diagram of the solar system. I almost said a star chart. It's a diagram of the solar system. We're going to advance this a week to July 8th. There's where things will be in a week as we approach another new moon. And the reverse werewolves are ready to stay in instead of coming out. Here's a star chart. If you're up before dawn, you may see Saturn, Jupiter, and the moon up there near the ecliptic, which is this yellow line, the path the sun will take across the sky. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux, the most proportional data set to sunspot number, is now at 94. So there's cycle 25 finally progressing. We've got some trans-equatorial coronal holes we'll show you later in the video. We saw a brief period of geomagnetic unrest here. A KP of 4 actually did occur. Not quite when the NOAA forecast occurred, but hey, at least NOAA forecasted it. We'll show you that in a moment as well. First, global seismicity, which is at a lull. We're seeing a massive drought of large earthquakes. So I think this 90-day bar graph is a great representation of how few 7+ magnitude quakes we've seen here over that period of time. Shockingly low number of quakes, and if you're in a zone of the planet prone to large earthquakes, please be prepared and treat current earthquake activity as foreshocks. We have no idea where the next earthquake may occur, and while we don't discourage anybody from forecasting earthquakes, we also don't believe anybody is forecasting earthquakes. In any case, here is the 5 magnitude breakdown and the 4 magnitude breakdown on volcanodiscovery.com, and let's go to the USGS list. So at least one quake there in the 5 magnitude range. I think it's more like 2. One of them was near Easter Island there in the South Pacific, one of the most desolate points in the whole planet. Argentina saw a deep quake at a 4.7 magnitude, 214 kilometers depth. There's that 5.2 in the Easter Islands region. A bunch of quakes in California there, as you can see. Band AC saw a deep 4.4 magnitude quake. So there was a second. There were 2 5 magnitude quakes at Easter Island area. I think that's actually west of Easter Island, but anyway, there's almost nothing there to tie the data to. So the highly unpopulated Easter Island still does house a few people, by the way. Here's an extremely shallow quake, 300 meters above sea level. Estimated depth there at Williams, California. Let's take a look at that. If there's no mountain there, I'll find it strange. And just give the interactive map a minute to load here. So northwest of Sacramento there. that shallow quake just to the west of the Colusa Basin, southwest of Williams. Let's go back to the list. Anyway, please consider all earthquakes a foreshock, as we are waiting to see where the next 7+ magnitude quake happens. It's a massive drought here over the past 90 days. Only one 7 magnitude quake here on planet Earth over the past 90 days. Here's one of the other 5. So it looks like there were 3 5 magnitude quakes there, that one occurring in Mexico. Alaska also seeing a bit of a swarm there in the Aleutians and in the southern area. And let's move on to talk about volcanism. So here are the charts from Fagradalsfjall, the Icelandic volcano, which erupted in spectacular fashion, has been increasing its lava area as it filled in its crater valley and became a shield volcano. It went from being a cinder cone to being a shield volcano, folks. Anyway, there's the graph showing the lava area, the lava volume, which has been steadily increasing here. Lava discharge has been increasing as well over the past few days here, having flattened out. Now it's slightly increasing here. Also, the gas release looks like it's leveled out. Anyway, let's check the rest of the list here on volcanodiscovery.com. So the average lava flow discharge rate at the eruption site during the period 11th through the 26th of June is about 13 cubic meters per second, which indicates a stable flow level in comparison to most other eruptions. So here's a new one on the list here, Sarachev Peak in the central Kuril Islands. Alert level raised to yellow as it's produced a 10,000-foot plume of ash. Alert level only yellow, having produced a flight level of 100. Abiko, flight level 100 there as well. Similarly sized ash plume. Subanose Jima, 5,000-foot ash plume above it. And Tal has been creating some VOG, which has been showing up at Manila, Philippines. Not optimal. VOG is a hazy mixture of sulfur dioxide and aerosols, tiny particles or droplets, basically glass and sulfuric acid and all kinds of other things you don't want to be inhaling. So some VOG showing up thanks to Tal volcano there in the highly populated city of Manila, Philippines. Sangay in Ecuador exploding, 20,000-foot ash plume there, 25,000-foot ash plume over Peru from Sabancaya as it explodes, a perfect reminder to not pole vault the caldera. Thanks to everybody who's picked up merch, by the way. Cheers. We greatly appreciate that, and we hope you enjoy the amusing products. So here's the GOES X-ray flux, and we saw a double flare here, 2 C-class flares in close proximity to each other. I think they came from 2835, Sunspot 2835, but I'm not entirely sure, as it's not really that big of a deal. And once again, I believe that if this sunspot was not Earth-fit, in other words, if this sunspot was on the limb, this would have probably been an M-class flare. And don't be surprised to see an M-class flare from Sunspot 2835 if it remains as significant as it has been. In other words, if its field complexity stays like it is. Don't be surprised to see an M-class flare from it as it approaches the solar limb. And the GOES proton flux continuing to be flatlined here. No coronal mass ejections headed Earth's way, as far as we know. Next, looking at the current sheet, which is a little bit jumbled up here, there's a bit of a magnetic battle going on between the North and South Pole current sheet just to our east. So east is in this direction, folks. Why? Because to the east is where space weather rises from. And it all has to do with those sunspots. The main sunspot activity is south of the solar equator, and that is delaying the arrival of the South Pole current sheet. There are also some coronal holes we'll show you in a minute. First, the line of sight ecliptic plane field plot, which also shows you North Pole current sheet in green, South Pole current sheet in red. This one also shows you the solar magnetogram. Let's look at the coronal hole line of sight field plot. There's a line of sight coronal hole plot. It shows you the sun's B field in blue, North Pole oriented coronal holes in green, South Pole oriented coronal holes in red. And I just want to bring up the last image here so I can characterize the polarity of the main coronal hole feature. So I'm going to press last, and I really can't tell. I think it may be North Pole oriented. Anyway, we showed a coronal hole earlier in the video in 193 angstroms. It looks like the North Pole coronal hole is larger than the South Pole one. They're actually mixing up here and both approaching the equator. So this coronal hole right here is the one we're talking about. I think it's North Pole oriented, but I'm not 100% on that. I'm about 99% on that. And also here on the right, you see the detected sunspot groups. I think Sunspot 2836 is going to be downgraded to an alpha class as well. Sunspot 2835 remains significant here. Beta Gamma Delta class. It still harbors the field complexity for significant coronal mass ejections and indeed solar flares. So there's the KP index, a measurement of global geomagnetism over the past 3 days. You can see we reached into geomagnetic unrest conditions here briefly. In the last 6 hours of the day yesterday, each bar represents 3 hours there. Let's have a look at the real-time solar wind. And around that time, we did see a shift in the phi angle and the BTBZ. The BTBZ shifted, the BZ shifted from -9 all the way up to +8, and then back down to -7 over a short period of time. Anyway, current conditions are solar wind density 9.2 protons per cubic centimeter, solar wind speed significantly elevated here at 506 kilometers per second. This looks like a diffuse coronal hole wind stream, folks, as we see the density drop off and the speed come up at the same time. It's got all of the features of a coronal hole wind stream, including an increased plasma temperature here. The bottom frame, the green, is the plasma temperature. And we're going to show the density and the pressure today. So here's the the proton density here. And this is 4 hours of data. Quite a dense plasma environment here around planet Earth. Keep in mind this shows white as low density and dark blue as high density. Here's the pressure. Also 4 hours of data, and we're seeing high pressure and high density plasma surrounding Earth, which, by the way, will lower the cosmic ray flux profile. In any case, that's 4 hours of data, and we're seeing some oddities on the ground magnetic perturbation, so check this out. So here are ground magnetic perturbations over the poles, and we're seeing some oddities here, some sudden fluctuations in the Earth's B field here. So some major perturbations here over the Canadian North Pole, nothing showing up over the Siberian North Pole, and the South Pole showing some similarly odd ground magnetic perturbations. So here's 4 hours of data from a different perspective. We showed you the polar view. Here's the global view. And some very odd magnetic anomalies here. So I'm going to let this one play through a second time here. And we show this data daily due to the magnetic excursion Earth is currently experiencing. If you want to see what was going on around this time of day on one of our previous videos, we've got pushing 800 daily space weather videos on our playlists, youtube.com/smashomash/playlists. Lots of content besides daily space weather videos there as well. By the way, we also are on BitChute. There is some exclusive content over there. BitChute.com/smashomash. Look for more to come as we continue making more and more content. as more and more things become relevant to talk about. We also do regularly stream live to Twitch thanks to our followers over there. We'll stream a meteorology segment today once again. Most of all, thanks to our YouTube subscribers. Please tell your friends and foes about the channel. Please share the content on your social media, as somehow I don't think the algorithm appreciates our channel, as we expect to get paid by Google, not to pay Google, in order to appear higher on their pathetic, biased search results lists. We're also on Discord. By the way, you need an invite to join our Discord channel if you'd like your graphics displayed on our daily space weather videos. If you've got images of the Aurora Borealis or perhaps your solar telescope or whatever, post them in our Discord chat. We may feature them on the daily space weather videos. I'd like to welcome all of our viewers to the Neo Renaissance. Today's cosmology segment will be integrated into the daily space weather video because it's going to be short and simple. So head to smAsho.com. Don't forget to check out our forum as well. And if you head to smAsho.com and click on smAsho merch, you'll find this page, our red bubble shop. Thanks again to everybody picking up merch there. Today's featured product is the Vaccinate This Socks. Since my vaccination status is none of your business, and since the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996 has not evaporated due to any reason, pandemic or otherwise, my vaccination status is none of your business. It's not even our patrons' business. However, our patrons do get first dibs on all kinds of alerts, like space weather alerts, all kinds of multimedia, and other perks for our patrons. And if you'd like those perks and early warnings before anybody else sees them, as well as all kinds of other important, relevant astrophysics and cosmology information, patreon.com/smashamash is the place for that. There's all kinds of stuff there that we never ever talk about on these videos. Patreon.com/smashamash. Thanks again to our patrons. Here comes our cosmology segment. It's going to be pretty basic. We're talking about entry number 13 at the Neil Gorel Swift Bat X-ray Observatory. And it's a BL Lacertae object known as QSO B0033 plus 595. It's got alternate names as well. This is it in optical bands Z and G from Pan-STARRS. Let's take a look at it on the infrared. There it is on the infrared spectrum from the 2 mass. Let's see if it shows up on the Galix. That is ultraviolet light. And not so bright there. How about the Chandra? How about the XMM Newton? And there it is in X-ray. It's quite a bright X-ray source, as you can see. Or perhaps the only X-ray source studied in that area by the Multi-Mirror Project. Again, that's QSO B0033 plus 595, a type of double nucleus, active galactic nucleus. Let me show you that again on Pan-STARRS to explain that. So there's a great high-res view here on Pan-STARRS, and you can see it's clearly a double nucleus. So you can see the crosshairs is on this dark spot in between these two bright spots, indicating that this is some sort of a galactic merger, a double nucleus, something like that. And that's why we featured it on today's cosmology segment. Here are the X-ray outputs from this galactic core, or double galaxy, or whatever you'd like to call it, the BL Lacertae object. So there's the 16-year graph of its X-ray outputs, and here's the 30-day graph of its X-ray outputs. It's a pretty consistent X-ray source. And you can find that entry number 13 here at the Neil Gorel's Swift Observatory, studying hard X-rays. By the way, we recently updated our forum, and we're up to over 1,700 registered members here on forum. Perhaps check this out. The Cosmology Forum has just been updated with an article about the MOST. So if you weren't aware of this, we have a forum thread here pinned to our Cosmology Forum called the MOST. It's at smashamash.com/forum, and you can link to it from our homepage. smashamash.org will redirect you to the homepage. And check it out. The latest entry here on our over 5-page document is about the smallest white dwarf ever known. So this white dwarf, smaller than the moon, actually it's just a little bit bigger than the moon, but more massive than the sun. So it's only 4,300 kilometers across, 4,300 kilometers in diameter, while the moon is only 3,500 kilometers. So comparable in size to the moon, the smallest and most massive white dwarf ever seen. I'm not going to get into any refutations over mass or anything like that. It also has a massively powerful magnetic field. Do you think these things might be related? I'm just going to leave it there. And if you want to read more about the most in the realm of cosmology, head to smashamash.com/forums, Cosmology Forum. And there are all kinds of other interesting objects there as well. By the way, this does rotate very quickly as well. It's not the fastest rotating white dwarf ever seen, but it rotates once every 7 minutes. Also, it's only 130 light years away. This will be a good one to keep an eye on in the future. And when I say eye on, the pun is intentional. Have you noticed some similarities between this and this? I just figured out, yeah, you get the idea, right? Anyway, don't short circuit trying to convince people that this thing isn't really on Mars, but is in Nevada somewhere or in California. Anyway, there's the Mars rover, as well as the Ingenuity helicopter with its solar panel out. That's the astronomy picture of the day from apod.nasa.gov. There you go. I displayed the caption. Feel free to pause the video if you need to check that out. Today's cosmology segment was integrated into the Daily Space Weather video, and don't forget to check out our other cosmology segments. They're all on a playlist, and we're pushing 200 videos in our cosmology segments. youtube.com/smashamash/playlists will show you all of our playlists. Let's get back to space weather here, as there's still plenty of additional stuff to cover. Electrons can charge up satellites, but they're not currently doing so. No charging hazards right now. Here's the 1-year chart of the relativistic electrons that surround planet Earth. It's from solon.info, and here's a 3-day chart just at low to moderate levels here. And we can expect low levels to continue, as we are apparently seeing a coronal hole wind stream arriving. So I would say this is probably going to be down here instead of up here. NOAA's forecast is probably pretty close there. It's not a major refutation. That's NOAA's forecast for electron content. And here's a visualization of the entire air column. We're seeing some anomalies once again down here around South America. So this gives us insight into the magnetic field of planet Earth. And we noted some anomalies earlier in the video, the geomagnetic perturbations. And I'm going to let this play through a second and probably even a third time. Electrons are very light in mass. They're very light in mass, and the total electron content gives us indications into what's going on with Earth's magnetic field. So here are some changes being documented as these electron anomalies, you can see down in this area especially, south of Africa, give us insight into how Earth's magnetic field force lines are oriented, as the electrons are the least massive thing that is orienting to those magnetic field force lines. This also causes GPS errors, and that's the main thing this is used for. However, our channel regularly uses it to show you additional insight into what's going on with the magnetosphere. We've documented similar anomalies previously. There's another set evident in the total electron content forecast. Here's a diagram of Earth's Van Allen belts. Feel free to pause the video on that. Distances are shown in miles. And here is the ionosphere. So we're looking at the F ionosphere here, located at 300 kilometers of altitude. This is just one slice. And what you're looking at is vibrational frequency. We're seeing anomalies once again here in the southern portion of South America and the South Pacific. So we saw these subside a little bit. Now they're kicking back up again. Some ionospheric anomalies noted there. And we'll bring up the latest image here. There's the latest image from 9:15 Universal Time, things looking more normal at that moment. By the way, we are going to do a meteorology segment. If you haven't checked it out, we've got a playlist for it, our meteorology segments. We don't just do daily space weather. Next, we're looking at bonus features here, and we see some brightening happening here around Sunspot 2835. An indication flares happened while we shot the video. This data is only 4 minutes and 4 seconds old when we recorded this section. I would also note there are filaments all around down here. You can see these dark regions. Those are all filaments, and those can eject with absolutely no warning. We'll be keeping an eye on it, and when I say eye on, the pun is intentional. Next, the GO16 SUVI thematic map. And of course, the main point of interest is Sunspot 2835. You can see some pink there, which is actually flaring activity. So indeed, there was a flare happening while we did the recording of the video. Here is the latest intensity gram. And our regular viewers will be able to see how this has grown since yesterday. Sunspot 2836 is still beta class, as we do have a North Pole umbra here. It's very weak, trailing this South Pole umbra. I would say it's probably going to continue to degrade today. It's going to lose its beta classification. Sunspot 2837 up here still remains beta class as well, or maybe it's newly beta class. I don't really know. Never memorize something you can look up. That's a quote from Einstein, by the way. Anyway, there's the magnetogram of 2835 and 2836. Here's a magnetogram for 2837. Eyes on 2835. It's the point of most resistance. And we've got two more sets of imagery to close out the video here. This is the SDO colorized magnetogram composite along with 171 angstroms. Fantastic imagery there from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. That's the browse data feature, by the way. And here's 131 angstroms. Again, thanks for tuning into the Daily Space Weather. Don't forget to tell your friends and foes about the channel. Press that share button. And if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. May that solar wind be at your back. And we'll see you next time here from the Smash News Network. Least busted. Name in news.